If I had not taken that real ownership over the process myself and grasped those concepts so I could fully understand them, I don't think I would have still been in business.
I'm completely guilty of this mistake, this failure myself. When I first got into online business and I decided that I wanted to make money online with just a laptop, I tried to go out and do these things on my own without any support.
I did it myself. I started off by thinking, well, I think that, my gut instinct, which is a dangerous thing sometimes, you've got to be very careful.
Going to give you a huge head start and take away headaches from the very start.
If you're riding a roller coaster, there are some high highs when the trends are high and you're selling and it's great and things are flying off the shelves, but then very low lows, like you said.
It's really important that we now provide some actionable advice for people. How can they avoid these 5 reasons for people that fail?
And this is something that's potentially even more dangerous because it doesn't reveal itself until potentially you're too far into the business to back out. Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast, where we unlock the secrets to high-ticket dropshipping and achieving financial freedom. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and I'm joined by James Eardley, client success coach at Dropship Unlocked. Each episode, we'll be sharing our experiences and providing you with the tools you need to build a successful e-commerce empire of your own. From zero to owning £1 million online business, we'll help you achieve the ultimate freedom over your time, location, and financial future. And when we're not recording the podcast episodes or running our own e-commerce businesses, you'll find us helping people like you launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. To learn more about working with us, head over to dropshipunlocked.com/free. Now sit back, relax, and get ready to access your full potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 reasons why new dropshippers fail and how you can avoid the common pitfalls. So we're going to talk about from our experience and also what we've seen in terms of the Dropship Unlocked program and how we can help others avoid these sort of pitfalls. And I'm joined today again by the founder of Dropship Unlocked, Lewis Smith, and there's no one else better to talk about how to avoid failures in dropshipping than Lewis Smith. So Lewis, pleased to be joined with you again today. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, I've had enough failures along my journey, so hopefully I can add some value here today to help people avoid some of those common pitfalls. But yeah, we've got a lot of material we can cover in this episode, so I'm hoping that it'll be a really good one and can help a lot of new and aspiring entrepreneurs and dropshippers out as much as possible.
Great. So I'm really excited to dive into this today. I can see how much notes we've got for this recording, and there's so much value, so can't wait to go through all this with you today, Lewis. And also, likewise, I've made plenty of mistakes along my road in online business. So I don't want those mistakes to be in vain. So if we can help people out and tell people how they can avoid the mistakes that we've made, then we'll be doing the right thing today. So over to you, Lewis. What do you think is the number one reason or the first reason why new dropshippers fail?
Yeah, whether it's the number one reason or whether it's just one of many reasons. But I think firstly, one of the things is that people will try to start a business without any support. So oftentimes I think that's because people think that it's the easiest option to just jump in. And I'm actually guilty of this as well because I often am quite hands-on and tactical. I like to just get in and actually do something to try to figure it out. But there's a difference between working hard and working smart, right? If you're just running in a hamster wheel and you're making all of these expensive mistakes that are costing you in opportunity cost because you're making life so much harder than it needs to be because you're trying to figure these things out on your own, those mistakes will cost you a lot of time and ultimately a lot of money. It's a bit like if you were trying to build your own house, you'll probably consult with an architect and a surveyor, and get the plans drawn up. You'll then bring in the builder, you'll speak with an electrician, a plumber, make sure the pipes are in the right place, the wiring's all done correctly. You still oversee the whole process of what's happening, this thing that you're building, but you're taking expert advice in all of those critical junctions. Every time you have a decision to make, you don't just think, okay, I'm going to go and, spend the next 6 months studying to be an electrician so I know how to wire that. Like, you just go straight to the electrician, right? You skip the queue, you skip the wait, and you skip the months of waiting and learning and trying to figure these things out, because these people who are specialists in their trades have done these things hundreds of times in the past. And it's exactly the same with dropshipping, right? You rather than trying to piece this all together, save the years of failure and just jump straight to the front of the queue and know that you can get up and running with a proven path. But this time it's not the surveyor and the architect and the builder and the plumber that you need, right? It's the experts who can guide you through certain parts of building your business, people who have done these things hundreds of times before. So, it's like niche selection. Which products do you sell? Or market research. Is a market too competitive? Is the pricing correct? Website design, how to optimize your website for suppliers and also customers once you start getting traffic to your site. Marketing strategies, paid ads, building your systems, making things work behind the scenes. All of these things are like specialty skill sets that, you could go and try and spend the months trying to figure them out, or you just go and leverage something that already exists that can guide you through how to do it. So yeah, these things that would otherwise take years for you to learn on your own, you can really just shortcut that route to success by learning from the people who do these things day in, day out. So I think that's the first mistake people make, trying to do it without leveraging that existing support that's there.
Absolutely. And I'm completely guilty of this mistake, this failure myself. When I first got into online business and I decided that I wanted to make money online with just a laptop, I tried to go out and do these things on my own without any support, without even consulting anyone, any friends or family or anyone. I just decided that I was going to make money online and I didn't need anyone else around me to do that. And obviously for me, it's quite clear that that was always going to end up in failure because I wasn't around anyone that had achieved the success that I was going for. Now, conscious, we don't want this to sound like a pitch for Dropship Unlocked community, which there is now. But as soon as I did enter a community that were all aiming towards the same success and people were in there that had already achieved that success, it just made the world of difference to be able to know what to do next and get support from people around me that were all going for the same goals. So a huge one, definitely, and so important to be around the people that you want to emulate their success. So as well as being around them for emotional reasons, also they can give you the tactical support that you need as well. So actually, what do you need to do next? What do you need to click next on your laptop to get to the next stage in your business? So again, would you sort of agree with that, Lewis, in terms of being around people that can give you some real tactical support?
Yeah, it's one thing being around people who can kind of like talk to you about big picture and like, hey, this would be the right strategy to use. But then it comes down to actually using these platforms, these interfaces, the ad systems, the networks, the building your site on a platform like Shopify, for example. All of these kind of specific examples and things that you need to be able to look over someone's shoulder and just figure out like, okay, which button do I press? Which option did they choose at this junction? Because there are so many hundreds of decisions you have to make, and any one of those that you get wrong early on can cause big problems later on. So similar to a situation the other night, I thought this is kind of like as you're building a business. Like we use these, things like Gusto and HelloFresh, where they'll deliver the ingredients to your house once a week in a box, and it like allows you to cook with fresh ingredients. You have all the ingredients there in the box ready to go. So you never have to like go and find these like random ingredients you need for occasional recipes. And I was cooking dinner, and they usually send these recipe cards with them, which like guide you through step by step how to cook the meal. So it's like, okay, cut the potatoes up, like heat oil in the pan, put the chicken in, like all of this stuff. But I'd lost the card, or it just didn't arrive in the box. So I was like, okay, well, I could, I was looking at the ingredients, and there was all kinds of stuff there, like, things that I just wouldn't have known what order to do things in. And I could have probably just like mushed them all together, put them in the pan and figured it out in the end. But it likely wouldn't have been the most efficient path, and it definitely wouldn't have been the most well presented and tasty meal afterwards, right? But I looked online at the website, found the digital version of it, had my phone there, and just followed the instructions step by step. So yes, I could have put all these same ingredients together, and it's like that with building business. If you could probably try and figure each of these individual actions out through YouTube tutorials that would come from different sources that might be out of context, but it's frustrating, it's time consuming, and oftentimes you still won't get the same result anyway. So it's like, get the recipe card, get the tactics so that you can follow the steps. And in 15 to 20 minutes, I had a great meal prepared. And, the same is true of business. It's the sequence of steps that matter to get you to that end result. And it's very true as well with business, even more so than cooking a meal.
Absolutely. Yeah, such a good point. I think with online business, what we're all looking for is to click the right buttons in the right sequence. So eventually we've got an online business that's generating an online income stream for us every month and gives us the freedom that we're looking for. So instead of trying to work out that correct combination yourself, why not follow the same combination that somebody else has followed and already achieved the goals that you're going for? And really having that tactical support is huge when it's a real question that's in depth that you need to answer for yourself to be able to move on. As well as the tactical support, there's definitely something to be said about the emotional support that being around a team can have as well. So would you say that's as important as tactical support, or even more important potentially?
Yeah, the emotional and psychological mindset support of being in a community of people who are trying to strive for the goals that you're aiming for, or who have already achieved some of the goals that you may have thought were in your future, that can be so important. One of our members in our community, Mike, who was recently having a bit of a difficult time going through some big hurdles. He was trying to get his advertising set up correctly, but he hit a couple of roadblocks, and there were, sometimes these systems don't talk to each other properly, and you could tell he was getting quite frustrated. He posted in our group, and I think if it hadn't been for the emotional support of a community like ours that he's a member of, he would have probably remained stuck there, certainly for a lot longer than he did. But what was nice to see was our communities kind of rising up around him and raising him up and saying, look, we can show you how to get through this. We had the same thing happen. Here's how I did it. Someone will post a link to the right video in the program that shows them the way that we figured it out and teach it. And so everyone's kind of there cheering him on. And a couple of weeks later, what was really nice, he posted his screenshot in the members group, and it was his first sale of £4,200. So it was so great to see that emotional support had carried him through not only the initial challenges, but getting to the point where he was up, running, profitable, making sales with his advertising working correctly. And it's a little bit like, when a football team are kind of playing and they say afterwards, the crowd were really like our 12th man tonight, or 12th player on the pitch. And it's that rising community around the team that are so supportive, and they can hear them. Do you think that the players don't get mentally affected by that? Of course, there's a psychological advantage if your fans are cheering for you to try and raise you up, and that often will help a team win a game that they may have otherwise been struggling with. So yeah, huge benefit to that emotional support.
Absolutely. Great to hear about the story from Mike. It's so rewarding when people are able to get past something that they previously didn't think was possible because of the support they have around them. And it also reminds me of a one-to-one support session I did yesterday with one of our Dropship Unlock members, Will. And he was having a specific tactical issue where he couldn't find the brand names for the people he wants to sign with. And so what he needed was obviously the tactical support that I was able to provide in terms of this is how you can go about finding your suppliers' names and the contact information to get in touch with them. But also I know that if he leverages the Facebook group that we've got, the community that we've got, he can also get around people that have had the exact same issue and not just get their tactical support, but also the emotional support, just to say that I've been through this exact same thing, now I'm through it, and let me help you, and we'll get through this. In a few days' time, you'll have done the same thing as what I've done. So something so important, and it's not just needing the Dropship Unlock community, so it's not just a pitch. Make sure just having some support around you, some community around you is so important. What I found is that when going for an online business, it wasn't enough just to have family and friends around me, because they might not actually be aware of the difficult challenges that you're having with growing a business. So being around people that are like-minded to you and going for the same goals, that's really where you get the most level of reward back from people that are around you and helping you out to get through to achieve your goals. So that's community and support covered. What would you say is the next reason why potentially people going into dropshipping might fail?
Well, aside from the community, the emotional support, the getting support in general, I think oftentimes people will work very hard. They'll be surrounded by people, but they're just picking a flawed model, or a model that isn't optimal for what their end outcome goal is. I did it myself. I started off by thinking, well, I think that my gut instinct, which is a dangerous thing sometimes. You've got to be very careful if your gut instinct is the sole criteria you're using to make a decision based on. I thought people will be passionate about these products. I could sell these low ticket items and I just know they'll sell. Right? And when I hear people say that, I always try and catch it and say, but have you run it through the data? Have you looked at the criteria? We have these threshold criteria, obviously, now that we would look at to check whether, there are certain things that are met before proceeding. But no, I didn't. I just used my gut instinct and thought, yeah, I think that'll work. And it did. It made some sales. I spent a lot on ads and don't think I really made any profit because I spent so much on ads and import taxes and all of this stuff. So it was a loss making, and you could argue, well, that's not really a business then, is it? It's not, it's not creating cash flow. It's not adding value, especially not to the customers who were waiting for long delivery times of low quality items to be delivered from abroad. So they were frustrated customers. They left bad reviews, unhappy with the service. We had chargebacks and all that frustrating stuff that you get. And eventually I just shut the whole thing down and just said, that's not a model that I want to proceed with, because even if I had figured out the ad profitability and slicked out the customs import duties and, had done it, it's still, I'm fighting an uphill battle because the model's flawed. So it doesn't matter how emotionally supported I am or how much of a community I'm in, if I'm doing the wrong thing that is not aligned to where I want to get to, which is to have a nice, profitable lifestyle business that frees up my time, gives me autonomy, control, flexibility over what I do with my day, then I'm probably looking at the wrong opportunity, right? So now with our home turf advantage model, which is the model we use, we work with UK-based suppliers. We sell high-ticket products, so high-priced items, anywhere from 300 up to several £1,000s, as you saw from Mike's first order of £4,200 for one item. That's one sale. And we're selling those, importantly, to UK-based customers. So the supplier is in the same country as the customer, which makes the whole thing work so much smoother. It means we can offer next day delivery a lot of the time. It means we get much happier customers, which obviously then long-term means that word of mouth grows and we can really start to grow that brand.
Yeah, so I liken it almost like a hamster in a wheel. So if you're just following the wrong model and you're working really hard, like a hamster in a wheel, you're still not going to get anywhere just because the model you've actually chosen is flawed. And I've had the experience of choosing a low ticket model where, as hard as I worked on trying to get that to sell, if I'm trying to sell products that people don't actually want and they're coming from China with 4-week delivery time, that model's flawed from the start. It doesn't matter how much I push those products, I'm just not going to get enough sales to warrant my time. So absolutely, picking the right model from the start is going to save you so much wasted energy and make sure you're on the path to success from the very start. So in terms of actually the final point in creating value for your customers and making sure that they're happy through choosing the right model, how does that lead on to then having the right brand in place that your customers can really buy into?
One of the main reasons why you want to pick the right model from the outset, in my opinion, is that if you can treat your customers in the way that I just mentioned, where they're happy, they get fast delivery, the items are, your service and level of support is manageable because you only have a few orders per day to make £10,000 in sales per day, for example, then it will mean that they share their opinion of your brand with other people, and customers will often hear this and they'll decide to buy. But the inverse is true as well. If you go down the route of just trying to make a quick buck and having really low customer support because you've got such a high volume of orders and things are constantly going wrong, the opposite is true, right? You'll start to build up a bad reputation for your brand. People won't want to buy. And what I often think of it is, it's like, there's music artists that you just see appear in the charts out of nowhere, and they release a single and it just goes straight to the charts and you've never heard of them before. And it's that like one hit wonder. They didn't focus on creating a repeatable process, because oftentimes after that one hit wonder, you never hear from them again and they're never back in the charts again. But they never built their brand. They just kind of released something and it was good for a time. That's a bit like the low ticket model, or focusing on something that's trending. We'd never recommend selling trending products, because ultimately the people we work with want to build a long-term, sustainable, scalable asset of a business that they can then ultimately exit from if they want in years to come, or just use as a cash flow machine to live their life through. Now, if you compare that one-hit wonder type business model with the long-term artists who've been around for decades, and just every time they release something, it goes straight to number one, or they're always in the top 10, for example, they've built their brand. And with that brand comes a lot of brand loyalty. So they have a loyal fan base. They've got customers, right? So the equivalent of customers for our e-commerce brands, who, because they treat them right and they consistently produce this incredible music, they're just coming back for more every time. And so it's the same with e-commerce. Instead of just focusing on making a few sales and thinking, like, let's make as much profit as we possibly can, and disregard the consequences, if you build a long-term brand, you've created far more of a valuable asset if ultimately you choose to one day sell the business.
So definitely don't be a one-hit wonder, absolutely. And it's funny because it reminds me of when I first started, and I definitely picked the wrong model initially. And this is true. My first store that I ever built on Shopify was actually called the Hype Store, because I knew that I wanted to sell trending products. I wanted to jump on the back of a trend, these low-ticket products, buy them in from China at a very low price, and sell to people that were getting involved in the hype that was created through Facebook and Instagram ads. And needless to say, that didn't last long, because I was being that hamster on a wheel, having to always find what the new trending product is. And I would realize quickly that I'd have to keep reinventing the wheel. Even if I made success with one product, if I didn't then jump onto the next trend early enough, the next month, I would quickly jump off that wheel and the success would dry up. And that's never going to allow me to go off and spend time wherever I want, with whoever I want, doing whatever I want, because I'm constantly going to have to be creating a new store every month. So the wrong model there. And I was definitely going down the lines of being a one-hit wonder and not having that sustainable brand, which I can put in place and I've got now. So with that in mind, people that are just getting started in dropshipping, they need to go in with the right model. So is it important then that new dropshippers are thinking about actually the end before they've even got started?
Definitely. People often make the mistake of starting an e-commerce business without the end in mind. And it's a mistake that costs them dearly in the long run, because how do they know if they're making progress if they don't know what the end goal that they're striving for is? It's very difficult to measure, right? Is it a lifestyle business? And if so, what does that mean to you? What is your lifestyle? Is it so you could travel more or free up your time to spend living your life, doing things you want to do, giving you that autonomy, that control, that freedom over how you choose to spend your days? Or is it so that you can scale up to a global brand, a huge conglomerate brand that one day you choose to exit for a life-changing sum of money so you can then invest maybe into property or something else you're passionate about? Or perhaps it's more altruistic. Maybe it's helping people or giving back through charities or to your community. But it's very difficult. If you don't have those goals clearly in mind when you start, then you're just driving nowhere. It's like getting in a car, heading off for a road trip, and then just starting driving. And then the passenger says, like, well, where are we going on this road trip? And you're like, well, I don't know. We're just on a road trip. And so it's very difficult for you to know if you're even driving in the right direction or just driving around aimlessly. So that's why at the beginning of working with us, we get very clear on our members' goals as to what are they actually, like, what does success look like for them in our community? Like, what's their reason for starting a business in the first place? Because once we're both aligned on what success looks like for them, it's like we can both measure it that way, and we can both say, okay, you've made actionable and tangible progress towards that end result for you.
I think once you've got a clear goal and a clear end in mind, then all of your decisions become easier then, because you know what you're aiming for. So you don't deliberate over whether you're going to do this model or this model, because you know what your end goal is. So you'll be able to choose clearly the model that gets you closer to that end goal. So having your goals clear, how you want your lifestyle to look, how you want your income to look, is huge before you even get started. I completely agree. So now once people know what they want and they've got the end in mind, how would you suggest they start? And on that point, what's another reason why people fail when they first get started?
When people try to sell something that they think will work, and we talked about gut instinct earlier, but they don't have the data to back it up, then you're kind of just chasing trends. You're thinking, I think that this will work because it's popular in my circles. But remember, your circles are not representative of an entire market necessarily. And there are a lot more factors that go into deciding on the viability of a business than just your immediate surroundings. So it's quite difficult to not be blinded by that local bias. So I think that chasing trends in e-commerce is a bit like if you're riding a roller coaster. There are some high highs when the trends are high and you're selling and it's great and things are flying off the shelves, but then very low lows, like you said, with your store that you started originally. As soon as that first thing's no longer trending or the market's saturated with competitors who are just undercutting on price and it's a race to the bottom on profitability, you're never really making consistent progress. You're just, okay, back to the drawing board. We've got to do the same thing again. But if you build a brand that's based on consistent demand, so something that you know is going to consistently be there and demand, and it's the demand will be there, and it's not just a one-hit wonder, it's not seasonal, for example, it's just consistent demand. That creates a much steadier path to success over the long term, rather than you having to constantly start over and think, okay, what's trending now? Like, what's the next thing that I can go after?
Yeah, the way I was actually getting ideas for products back then was just following YouTube trends and being told what to sell because what was a trend at the moment. But those videos had about 1 million views and everyone else was thinking, oh, I'll sell that as well. And so clearly you're just going to markets that are going to get saturated with competitors straight away. And it was exhausting as well, trying to find new products to sell. Quickly became exhausting and the reward just didn't match up for the amount of effort that you had to put in. So clearly making a decision based on data is huge when informing which products you're going to sell. So how would you suggest that people actually start choosing which products to sell?
Yeah, there are lots of data points that we would look at and advise looking at to any of our members before committing to selling a certain subset or niche of products. So one of the ways that we would research a market is initially we would validate the data of, for example, we might look at search volume thresholds, right? So that's how many people per month are searching on the search engines like Google for the products that you're considering purchasing. Now, it's very difficult to create demand for products that doesn't already exist, or it's not necessarily difficult, it's just expensive, because you have to convince people first that they want something and then convince them that you're the person to buy it from. Much easier to flip that around and say, well, what are people already looking to buy? Where's their market opportunity, and where can I just slot into place as a retailer so I can add value and provide something that perhaps other retailers aren't able to? Another thing we do is ensure that we're not going into a really heavily brand dominated market where the suppliers are all these global brands. You know, if I say, okay, on my store, I'm going to go and sell laptops. So it's like, okay, I have to convince HP and Sony and Apple and, you know, all the big providers to work with me. Unlikely that me as a first time person in business, retailer with my very small enterprise knocking on their door, they're not going to supply me. It's very unlikely. So we tend to not go into brands or markets like that where those brands would not supply an online only retailer like us from the outset. That's not to say that you can't do that eventually, but if you want this business to work first time, there's a very proven model that we use with the Home Turf Advantage that just involves working with smaller industries, should we say. So looking at another thing that we could probably look out for, and we always would, and have very clear thresholds around this, is price consistency as well. So if you're thinking of selling product that you can see other retailers are succeeding at selling, if those other sites are selling the same products as you, exactly the same products as you by the same brands, are they also selling them at the same price as you? Or are some of them massively undercutting? And as we said before, is it a race to the bottom on profitability? Because that is not a market I would want to be in if that's the case. If there are a few people that are just so much cheaper than everybody else appearing on the search results for that same item, then that's going to be a tough market to crack, because you have to go in there and you can't compete on price, because if you did, you'd make no profit. So you have to figure out, well, how much extra value can I add that would convince a customer to purchase from me when I'm not the cheapest in the market, right? So of course there are things you can do to add value in a market, but when it's not a level playing field on price, it is quite difficult for that from that perspective. So I think, why pick that? Like, you haven't committed to that yet. This is the beauty of the business model. It's agile. We can change direction very quickly. So why go down that route if you can already see the warning signs around price inconsistency from the outset? Why enter that race to the bottom? It's not one you want to win anyway, right? So you may as well steer clear and go down a different route.
Definitely. And make that decision up front that you're only going to go into a niche where you're confident there will be a level playing field with the pricing of the products on your store compared to all of your other retailers. And I've seen people get frustrated with this in terms of going into niches where there isn't that price consistency. And then you've got the following up with competitors and suppliers and making sure that prices are aligned. So from the very start, making sure that there's price consistency across the products in your niche is going to give you a huge head start and take away headaches from the very start.
Yeah, when you're launching your e-commerce store, if you're just doing it based on products you think will sell, or you haven't done this level of research, it's like going up to play darts, right? And putting a blindfold on and then just throwing the dart and just hoping that you hit the board without any data. You're basically just taking wild shots in the dark and hoping that one of them hits the bullseye, right? But the difference is when you use the data and you follow the steps and you measure it against the criteria that we lay out, it's like the equivalent of taking off the blindfold, walking right up to the dartboard a couple of feet away, and then just throwing it from there, right? You've got a much higher chance of hitting the bullseye. But even if it doesn't quite work out, and say you just hit the outside of the board, at least you're on the board, right? And so it's about like refining that margin for error and making sure that you're much closer the first time around, learn from all of the mistakes that we've seen people fail from and failed from personally, and just take a route that gets you much closer to the bullseye and getting success with your e-commerce store the first time round.
That's a great point. I think people should keep that dart metaphor in mind when they're thinking about which products to sell. Should I go on to an unproven niche and put a blindfold on and hope for the best? Or should I get as close to that dartboard, pick a niche that's proven, that's met all of those three criteria that we've been through today, and throw a dart right and hit the bullseye first time round? I think that second option is going to be a lot more favourable. And it's certainly how I was able to build my business after going through the Dropship Unlocked course. So let's go through, I think we're on to number 4 now. So the fourth reason why new dropshippers fail. Why do you think some people struggle when they first get started?
Well, this one is quite linked to the sequence of the steps as before. And this is something that's potentially even more dangerous because it doesn't reveal itself until potentially you're too far into the business to back out, or it's very expensive and time consuming to back out. And that's not having a clear plan in place to achieve their goals from the outset, not having that roadmap to achieve those milestones along the way towards growing their business. So if you've ever bought flat pack furniture, right, you buy a table or something from IKEA and you get it out of the box. If you're anything like me, you probably just start trying to put it together straight away. You like the instructions go out the window and you just start screwing in bits and pieces, and that's fine because you start to see it. It's like, okay, now it looks like a table and we're coming together here, or a wardrobe or whatever. But it's not till closer to the end that there's always some little like bracket or something that you realize, no, in order to get that on, I needed to put that on before the leg went on or before the hinge went on, because now I have to take like 5 pieces off for it to do it. And so you end up reluctantly going back, reading the instructions and going through it. So it comes back to the point of the sequence of steps mattered. Because you ignored the instructions at the start, the problems didn't reveal themselves until later on, because you now have to go back and undo all of your work. And so one of the examples of this in my own journey that I remember was when I first launched my first e-commerce business. I'd been running it for probably a few months first, and everything was going well. We were making sales. But then probably close to a year in, I thought I'm going to start doing some serious like email and SMS marketing. But because I hadn't set up the systems correctly in the first place, so we weren't segmenting our email list correctly. We weren't tagging people for SMS marketing correctly. When it came to do that, there were some fundamental things that, because I'd missed them originally, I had to go back, change the systems, and we were effectively starting from scratch and like building up a new fresh list, because we hadn't really been contacting those people via email, and therefore they'd just gone cold over time or left or just unsubscribed. And so the sequence of steps mattered, because we got to the point where we realized we have to now undo all of that work, and we can't benefit from all of that previous work because we missed something critical at the beginning. So now whenever we launch a store, we set these things up first so that down the line, when we need to build on them, those foundations are already in place. And this is what we guide you through in our program. So you don't miss critical things early on that you might think, why would I bother doing that? It's because it's not until 6 months later you'd realize, I'm so glad that I did that, because now I've got so much data, or I can leverage that because now I have a team. I'm so thankful that I put that in place, because now I can step back from it. And so we've seen these things through to completion, which is why it's important to learn from other people's journeys who are ahead of you, right? That sequence of steps are mattered.
That's right. And that point about not quite knowing why it's important until it's too late is so key. It's like when I followed the program through and set up my business and getting my email address first and my phone number set up right from the very beginning, for one of the first few things we do before building a store or anything. It didn't make sense to me initially. But then when I realized that we were going to contact suppliers after this, and I need to have a professional email address, a professional phone number, then it all made sense. And having that clear plan was very clear to me why it was done in particular order. Otherwise, you try and do something too early before you've got the foundations in place. So huge, and that will make a big difference to your success or failure. Okay, so on to the fifth and final main reason now why new dropshippers can fail. What would you say that is, Lewis?
Well, whether it's the final reason, I'm sure there are many more, but for me, one of the big reasons is not understanding the numbers. And I learned this the hard way. I've talked about this in previous episodes, but early on in my business journey, I made some really big oversights when it came to measuring the profitability of my business. So understanding the ROAS, the return on ad spend, or really understanding our profitability versus our ad spend. So it's really easy to do when you are running a business like this, because at the very outset, you are wearing all of the hats. You're the chief marketing officer, you're the sales guy, you're the live chat person, you're the email support, you're the marketing manager, you are everything, right, when you first begin. So it's not surprising that entrepreneurs who maybe don't consider themselves numbers people, as I would class myself as one of those, I would say I'm not a numbers guy. But if things all look fine on the outside, because you're making sales, you're making good revenue, you're making tens of thousands of pounds per month in sales, but if you're spending more to acquire a customer through your ad spend than you generate in profit, like if you're making £300 in profit per sale, but you're spending £300 in profit on ads, which can happen if you're not measuring these things right from day one, then say, for example, you get to the end of the month or the end of the quarter, you've not set aside enough money to pay your VAT bill. The thing is that these things may seem like they don't matter at small scale, because you might have a VAT bill and think, we were a couple of £100 short for that versus what I predicted it would be, but that's okay. But then you multiply that by 10, and then multiply that by 100 when you start making tens of thousands of pounds per month, hundreds of thousands per month. It's very easy for a small oversight to land you in a position where, because you weren't managing your numbers from the outset, you like that small margin of error becomes quite a big end result. So I found myself personally in £20,000 worth of debt when we started really making sales, and so really ramping up our ad spend, because I was like thinking, oh, this is great, we're making sales, therefore let's scale. And entrepreneurship sometimes gets the people just want to scale at all costs. But what does scaling mean? Does scaling just mean scaling your top line revenue, or does it mean scaling your profit? Because you can't pay the bills with revenue, right? Your suppliers are not going to accept that you have to have the profit in the bank to be able to do that. And for me, it was down to not truly having a grasp on measuring the return on ad spend that we had, or our profit on marketing spend, as we prefer to view it. We try and look at things now on how much profit did we make from that marketing spend that we had. So after dedicating a lot of time to learning this stuff myself and really taking ownership over it and realizing that I have to understand these things, because even if I don't see myself as a numbers person, this is critical to succeeding with business. Eventually we came back from that point, and the store went on to make millions of pounds in sales very profitably over the next few years. But now what I do is I use, and also in our program, we provide the exact steps from day one to start tracking and measuring profitability, VAT, marketing spend, so that you ensure that you're profitable right from the outset, right from month one, because it nearly cost me my business very early on. And if I had not taken that real ownership over the process myself and grasped those concepts so I could fully understand them, I don't think I would have still been in business. So I'm thankful that I did that just in time, and even more thankful that now I'm able to actually teach those things and pass those lessons on, so that the next me out there currently in that position doesn't hit the same brick wall that I nearly did.
Yeah, thank you for teaching me those lessons that you learned from your mistakes and failures in the past, because I didn't get into that situation where I was in debt. You obviously teach very clearly a model of like accrual accounting, where we're actually keeping an eye on the numbers day in, day out. And actually, we know as soon as we make every sale, we know how much we've made for that sale. So we can see whether we're profitable the whole way through. So you can notice something. If something's not right, or if you're not making money on sales, you'll know that straight away. There's no waiting for a month before it's too late. You can see that and make changes straight away, which is so important, because you're just not taught this sort of thing at school. There's no entrepreneurship lessons. There's no lessons about keeping your numbers and keeping books or anything like that. So you have to go out there and learn it from somewhere. Otherwise, it's so foreign, all this numbers thing, especially if you don't identify as like a numbers person either.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because oftentimes you might be listening to this now and think, how on earth did you get into that kind of a situation? Like, surely you can just make sure that the business is profitable from day one. But imagine this: if you're making, 50,000 in sales in a month, and your supplier is giving you a nice big line of credit, so you're not actually seeing the cost of those sales leaving your bank account. So the 50,000 you made in sales is just sitting in your bank account, 50,000. But actually, you might owe 25, 30,000 to a supplier, right? If you think, right, we're going to go big, we've got 50 grand in the bank now, we're going to blitz it on all of the ad platforms and hire someone else for the team and really scale up. Suddenly, you might have spent that extra 20 and you're down to 5. All right, because you didn't, or you might have taken out the business and thought, I'm going to go buy a car and go on a nice holiday and, treat my family to something I've always wanted to. And there's nothing wrong with that. But doing it too early, it's very easy to get carried away when you see those big numbers in your bank account and I think, I've made it, I've done it, I've cracked the code. And then suddenly, the tax man comes knocking, or suppliers come knocking, and you realize, I wasn't there yet. I thought I was, but I wasn't. And it's really easily done, especially for a first-time entrepreneur. So yeah, we try and make sure that people understand that measuring that cash flow and build that delayed gratification, so it gets to the point where that could never happen again, because you have a more than enough buffer of cash in your business account at any one time to weather those types of unexpected events.
So important, because the numbers really are the bottom line, and that's really what's going to put you out of business if you haven't got a keen eye on your numbers. So such an important point. So we've been through the main reasons now. It's really important that we now provide some actionable advice for people. How can they avoid these 5 reasons for people that fail? So let's go through each of them now. So initially we talked about how we can make sure you start with support in place. So how can people make sure they're around the right types of people to guarantee success?
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's don't try and build the house without the architect, surveyor, builder, plumber, electrician there with you. It's exactly the same with building your business. By joining an e-commerce community such as forums or Facebook groups, things like that, you find those like-minded people that you can connect with. You ask for their advice when you get stuck. You consult with experts. And it's just like you would when you're building a house. You wouldn't try and go and learn each of those things individually and spend years. You do that in business by finding mentors or coaches or people who can guide you through the process and growing your business because they've done it hundreds of times before.
Yeah, and there's plenty of places. We're fortunate now with the online world that there are plenty of places where we can get into groups of people that are all going for the same goals. So it's so important for people to do that and give themselves the best chance for success. We've also talked about how to avoid being a one-hit wonder and to build a sustainable long-term income stream. So how can people make sure that they don't fall into that pitfall as well?
Well, as we said, instead of just selling products, you're focusing on building your brand and you're prioritizing customer service and satisfaction so that you can build that loyal customer base that will just keep coming back. Yeah, don't be the one-hit wonder. Be the artist that grows that loyal fan base so that every year that you release a new album or song, you're straight in the charts. It's the same thing with building a business.
And we can do that through referral schemes or making sure you're hiring brilliant customer service, virtual assistants. There's many ways that we can do to make sure we're focusing on building a long-term brand that's going to outlast us. So another one we talked about today was making sure that we're selling the right products. It's going to be huge for the business. So how can we make sure that people are immediately selling the right products from the very start?
Well, the first thing that you would do is market research to identify the profitable niches and the products that are in demand. So we're looking at search demand, supplier availability, price consistency, seasonality, like all of these factors that we mentioned. And I think there's about 9 of them in our program in week 2 that we kind of just guide you through step by step what the thresholds are, how we do it. You look over the shoulder at my screen as I'm going through doing this research, showing you how we would do it. You can use tools like Google Trends and look at Amazon bestsellers and social media analytics, and you're just using it to gain insights into what people are buying, what they're interested in, and what they will continue to be interested in so that you can build that brand. And remember, by doing that, it's like stepping up to the dartboard, taking the blindfold off and knowing exactly where you're throwing it so that you hit that bullseye first time, or at least get very close to it, or at least hit the board, right? Versus just aimlessly throwing in the dark.
Yeah, so important that people go with the right niche from the very start. So as well, we talked about making sure there's a plan in place. And also with that, I think having a routine in place is so important so that it's very easy for you to stay disciplined and grow a business. So how can we give sort of specific advice over putting a plan in place and following a plan to success?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the 12-week year book that we mentioned in previous episodes, but that's something that I really enjoy the process of breaking down a big plan into actionable chunks and steps. And so that's kind of how we've built the program. It's very much step by step. You go through, you tick something off as you move through. And having that clear plan, those measurable goals, those milestones, is like, getting into the car with the person that you're heading on the road trip with and putting the destination into the sat nav. It's the same thing. It's like, you know where you're going, so therefore you can measure, well, what's our ETA? How far are we from the destination? And so with business, don't just jump into it without having a clear goal in mind. Know what you're trying to achieve so you can set a clear plan to actually get there.
And then with a plan in place, you've got the milestones that you will inevitably reach as you go for the larger goal at the end. And then when you hit a milestone, you'll know that you're on the right track towards success. Have a moment then to enjoy that and celebrate the success of reaching that milestone. And that gives you more momentum and more energy to keep pushing on until you achieve your larger goals. So hugely important to have a plan in place. And finally, understanding the numbers and making sure you've got a keen eye on the numbers from the very start is one of the main reasons why if people fail, if they don't have that in place. So how can people from the start make sure that they're keeping an eye on their numbers and they understand what to look for?
Yeah, we would be tracking everything from the number of clicks to your click-through rate to your conversion rate on your store. We'd be looking at every sale that you made. How much was the cost of goods on that sale? How much VAT should we be setting aside? How much did we spend on ads to acquire that customer? So that as we understand those numbers, we can not only look at the big picture of like, okay, how much profit did we make in the year, but really zoom into what was our cost per acquisition? How do we increase our lifetime value of a customer? Can we retain customers for longer by cross-selling, upselling? Are there other things that customer would enjoy as well that we can sell to them to offset the cost of ads in making them into a customer in the first place? So yeah, track it from day one, use the templates that we provided, don't fall into the same trap that I did, learn from my mistakes and the near miss I had right at the beginning of my journey, and use it to your advantage.
Loads of great points there. Thank you, Lewis, on that. And hopefully that helps people listening in today in terms of avoiding those failures when you do start with dropshipping. More specifically, Lewis, how do you help people, other than with the podcast, to actually avoid these failures and get set up for success from the very start?
Yeah, well, we've mentioned it a few times already on today's show, but at Dropship Unlocked, my company, we run a training program in the UK teaching you how to build a profitable dropshipping brand. So we cover all of the most common reasons for failure that we've discussed today, but we use it to guide aspiring entrepreneurs towards success. And we begin working with them on how that success is even defined for them, as we talked about earlier. So that's what we do in a nutshell. It's a 6-week online program with twice weekly coaching calls, and it guides people from never having run a business before with zero experience right through to being up, running and profitable in the UK.
Great. Thank you, Lewis. And that is the exact program. Dropship Unlocked is the one that I followed to get to the position I'm in now. And because I've achieved success and left my job and now run this dropshipping business full time, I'm delighted to be part of the Dropship Unlocked team myself now and helping new members and existing members to get to that next level of their business growth as well. So if you do join Dropship Unlocked, then no doubt you'll come across me, and I can't wait to help you as well to grow your business. So with that in mind and helping people out, we do have a question in from a listener to cover in today's episode. And it's a really, really good question. I'm excited to listen to your answer to this one, Lewis.
Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, if you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
So now on to the question from one of our listeners. The way he's got his question in is by emailing podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. So if you've got a question for Lewis or I, get your questions in by emailing podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. So that's exactly what Mike has done. And Mike has asked, he's wondering about starting a business, and he's definitely going to join the Dropship Unlocked community this year, which is great to hear. But he's wondering, in his time while he's saving up to get started with his business, is there anything he can do in the meantime to prepare himself and give himself a head start for when he does join the program and start his business?
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for listening to the podcast, and thank you for your kind words as well. It's great to hear that you're eager to get started with us. So yeah, I think while it's essential to be prepared for taking on a journey like this, it's also really crucial not to let that preparation become a form of procrastination. It's a really fine balance. And I think sometimes people get so busy getting prepared that they don't know when it's the right time to take a jump. So I appreciate if you're trying to get finances in order at the moment and get everything kind of shored up, ready to go, that's totally fine. But yeah, just don't let yourself get in your own way, because that's definitely something we see happen a lot with entrepreneurs. But no, here are some things you can do to prepare yourself to hit the ground running once you do join our program. So I think the first thing is to really research and learn as much as you possibly can. Lay the groundwork for what you're about to embark on by just absorbing knowledge. Be like a sponge in water, just soaking up information from wherever you can. So a really good way of doing that, if you want to keep it specific to this business model, the Home Turf Advantage, is just listen to all of our episodes of this podcast, because we've covered so much value in this. Go back to the beginning and just soak it all up, so that when you do join, you're ready, you're up to speed, you know what we do, you know all of the answers to the questions we've covered, and you can hit the ground running. The next thing you can do, Mike, is set a clear why. So spend some time writing down the reasons why this journey and why building this business is really important to you. Now, the reason behind that is because there will be some bumps in the road ahead. That it won't just be a straight journey from where you are now to success with e-commerce. There'll be a rocky road. There'll be some navigating around obstacles that you have to do. And so I always find that it's so much more powerful if you have a very clear outcome and reason why, and a desire that you're trying to do this for, because that will carry you through those obstacles. It will pull you towards the destination rather than just relying on motivation and willpower to keep pushing you over them. That can be quite difficult. But there's actually one step further than that you can do. There's quite a clever psychological principle, And it's that if you write down what happens if you don't take the leap, right? So if you just maintain where you are now, what does life look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? If you don't do this, right? Write that down. Take a pen and paper and just after this episode and just sit down and write, what happens if I don't do this? What's the opportunity cost of leaving it for another 6 months, for another year, for example? What do you miss out on in that time frame, other than the money, and the freedom and the flexibility? But what are the life experiences that you will miss if you don't take action on this? Sometimes I find that that's an even stronger motivator for me to take action, to build my business, to do the whatever I want to undertake, than me just chasing after what I desire. It's the fear of what I'll lose, that time with my family, that freedom to see the world, to travel, that financial security. It's all of those things that I won't have if I don't act and I don't do it. So once you do jump into our program, we'll be there to help you put all of these preparations into actions and start really growing your business. We provide you all that structured guidance, the support you need to turn all of your preparations that you've done ahead of time into tangible results. So yeah, as I say, it's really good that you're starting to prepare. Just remember that the real progress happens when you take the leap, once you jump in. So yeah, we're excited to have you on board soon and can't wait to see you on the inside, Mike.
Yeah, brilliant question. Thank you, Mike, for getting that in. And thank you, Lewis, for your answer. Couldn't agree more. Have a very strong reason why you're doing this. So use that with positive reasons, so what you're desiring, and also the negative side as well about what you're getting away from is really just going to light that fuel underneath you so you can go ahead and achieve your goals. I'm really excited to be in touch with you soon, Mike. Do join the program, and all of that groundwork you've done is going to just help you out so much when you do get started. So thanks again for your question, Mike. So now on to a listener review that we've received through Apple Podcasts, and this is coming from Ziggy S93. And Ziggy said, an insightful, valuable and relatable podcast for dropshippers at any stage of their career. He recommends to all those involved or thinking about making a start.
Thank you so much for your review, Ziggy. We really appreciate it. And if you'd like to hear your review read out on the podcast, then just leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Or if you're using YouTube, just leave us a comment on there. And we'd love to read out your review on the next episode. Also, if you could share this episode with a friend or a family member, perhaps you know someone who you think would really benefit from hearing this or has always expressed an interest in starting their own business and you'd love to see them succeed with that, then please do share this episode, as we'd love to help them too.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found today's episode useful and inspiring.
Remember, if you're ready to take the next step towards creating your own high-ticket dropshipping business, our step-by-step mentorship program can help. Just head to dropshipunlocked.com/free to learn more and get started on your own journey to financial independence.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode, and leave us a review if you've enjoyed what you hear today. We love hearing from our listeners and we'll even read out some reviews on the next episode.
And finally, thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you, and we'll be back soon with more valuable insights and tips on high-ticket dropshipping.